Hello everyone, welcome to today's BI Publisher presentation. We have a few excited people here to present experience with BI Publisher and how it helped the company Hamilton Telecommunications, our friends over there, help them migrate and upgrade to E920. Presentation today is the BI Publisher with all of its fixings. We'll just go through here to introduce today's speakers. Andrew, go ahead.
I'll introduce or start with the cast of characters or lineup as you see. My name is Andrew Ostick. I'm the Senior Enterprise Applications Administrator for Hamilton Telecommunications. I've been working with J.D. Edwards for 16, going on 17 years. Started as the end user, learning at the feet of the master at a prior company. So end user to evangelist, supporting everything from functional application development and technical aspects. From the world version of J.D. Edwards to now, we're on 9.2 that we just upgraded this year. I'm a generalist at heart, and I just love the system.
Perfect. And my name is Rain Dalton. I'm a developer at Team Kane Solutions, Inc. I have about 7 years in the IT industry where I've been focusing on development and technical support. And the last couple of years, I've been the lead BI Publisher developer and consultant for anything that is a BI Publisher solutions.
Hey, Jay. My name is Michael Guerin. Some of you might be familiar with me. I first touched J.D. Edwards in 1982, so 36 years in the marketplace, 17 years with Team Kane. I spent about 10 years directly with J.D. Edwards before that. And after seeing him present and do so much for the community, I also have my Andrew Ostick fanboy t-shirt on today. So, and I will just be monitoring for questions in the background for these fine two gents. Thanks, Rain. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, glad to have you here, Mike. So our agenda for today, we'll be doing a quick review of BI Publisher, what it is and how it works in JDE. And then the focus of today's presentation, we're passing it on to Andrew for a nice rundown on Hamilton Tel's upgrade and migration to BI Publisher and how that helped them with the reports. And then we'll sum this all up with a little bit of information about Team Kane's BI Publisher packs. Before we dive any further, we have a quick poll that we'd like to pop up for everyone. So just take a few minutes to look at that, just to gauge what your experience is with BI Publisher. Looks like we have quite a few that have worked with BI Publisher a bit. That's always good. A few that this will be some new information to. I'm glad to provide on that. Oh, thank you for that. Well, I'll just close that here. So it looks like most people have a bit of experience working with BI Publisher. Some have no, and we have a few that are very experienced with it. So glad to have you here and share some of this knowledge with us. So let's dive into this about some information on BI Publisher. So some basics on it. There's two versions of BI Publisher. There's the embedded version that produces designed batch job outputs, and the enterprise version. And that's more of an interactive reporting solution that's used for one-view reports or ad hoc analysis. The embedded BI Publisher is the one that we'll be talking about today, and is the one that we used with Hamilton Tel's upgrade to help produce their reports. So some basic information on that is that the embedded BI Publisher works with a JDE XML output that is generated when the report is run. And it then renders that report data with a template to produce a designed output. Editing and creation of these templates is done in Microsoft Word, and it uses a development plugin that you can download straight from the Oracle website. And because these templates are created in Microsoft Word, you use the Word features to control the placement and manipulation of the report elements. So that effectively means that you can create these pixel-perfect form designs. You have a lot of control on those elements. A little bit of background information on how this works in JDE is that there are objects with a few steps to configure that are needed in JDE for the output to utilize the BI Publisher process. So First off, you would create a template object, also known as an XML publisher object, and that's typically created in OMW in a FAT client. This is an object to which you would upload the created template, either a blank one if you're just starting out or one that's already been created. And second, you would create a report definition object, and what this would do is configure to link to a source UBE version and configure to link to that XML template object that we created in step 1. Here, you would also define the output options, such as bursting, emailing, or archiving as required. And the third major step is then you would then access the UBE version, you would check it out in OMW, and under revised version, specify the report definition to use. So these 3 steps effectively create the necessary objects for your outputs to utilize the BI Publisher process. Once those are created and ready for use, you would create the template in Word, where you would link the XML fields to display the data and add any additional business logic or conditions. And then finally, you would then upload that template. And that's a template, that's a process you would use for developing and testing. So the important steps are 1 through 3 to get the objects created and configured. And then you would repeat steps 4 and 5 to develop and test your template and design as you go. Now, Embedded BI Publisher does not require any additional licensing, so that's excellent. It comes with the JDE licensed footprint, and the only difference here is that the BI Publisher Enterprise Edition is the interactive reporting solution. That would require additional licensing purchase and it would require additional installation and configuration to use. So with the embedded version, you already have all the required items there in JDE as part of the tool set. The report templates are created with Microsoft Word primarily. However, the development plugin can also be used within Excel or Adobe Acrobat. Now, typically Acrobat's used for flat creations with limited conditions like tax forms, T4, W2s. Now, these templates, when creating, can also include charts, formulas, watermarks, and graphics. So there are specific types of that are supported as you're creating them in Word or Excel and Acrobat. The output types that you can get are PDF using Acrobat, an RTF output, which is the one used for Word. You have XML for just the data itself, HTML for website upload, or eText for EFT or CSV files to transfer that information. Reports are created, managed, and processed entirely using the E1 toolset. Now, they utilize the data that is generated with the E1 batch applications, the UBEs, and the output is generated on the enterprise server. And that output is then available where the standard outputs would be, such as WSJ or already submitted jobs. So important thing here is that it's all within the E1 toolset. Now, we talked a bit about data generated and the template. An important note is that the report layout is separate from the data. So the data collection of the report is handled by the E1 UBE, and then the report output layout is handled by the design. So you have the data collection, and that's pumped into the design. So just a distinction there. Again, with the output being rendered on the enterprise server, that gives you a lot of control using any installed fonts. You can enable logging and debugging, and generally maintain the BI Publisher like any standard JDE process. Okay, I'd like to pass this on to Andrew to talk about Hamilton.
All right, thank you, Rain.
Yeah.
Again, I work with Hamilton Telecommunications. We're a diversified communications and technology service provider. We're based in Aurora, Nebraska, where we provide telecommunications and technology solutions, which include broadband internet and the business class Ethernet to our customer base, along with fiber optic infrastructure. We also provide managed hosting, network, and data center operations, but the primary reason that we have JD Edwards is for our Hamilton Relay and Hamilton CapTel business lines, which is a telecommunication relay services for individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, or have difficulty speaking. So that's who we are. Now quickly talk about why we migrated our forms management solution. We had a third-party solution, and we wanted to take advantage of what we had licensed to us within our Oracle license footprint. So the primary reason we did that was use existing functionality, that embedded BI publisher, which we were already paying for and then had installed. We also wanted to remove the licensing and that support cost associated with our third-party solution, because with that, not just the licensing and support costs that we have with that, we had hosting costs for a dedicated server that allowed that third-party forms management solution to provide our business documents for our end users and our customer base. We wanted to reduce the number of forms, templates, and batch versions associated with managing all of those forms for our people. At the first part of 2018, we were completing our 9.2 upgrade. With that, we wanted to take advantage of the overall change management aspect of a major release upgrade. So we wanted to roll our forms migration in with that. Some of our end users then would therefore not understand that we were actually doing a forms management. So we taking advantage of a change management aspect of an overall upgrade was another reason for migrating. Another big reason, we teamed with Team Kane as our upgrade partner to 9.2. And knowing that they have these BI Publisher packs and Rain's work within that area helped us convince management that it was the right time to do it, because it would lessen the level of effort required on our side to migrate our forms management solution. And then finally, we wanted to transfer the ownership of our forms management solution and maintenance from an externally supported to more of an internally supported solution for us. So that is the backstory of why we migrated from Create Forms, which was what we were using, to the BI Publisher embedded functionality that we're licensed for. So as we talk today, as we go through this, and Rain will jump in, provide any clarity or context as necessary, but we'll kind of talk about what he had mentioned in his first 3 steps of the BI Publisher and the objects associated within the Enterprise One architecture. So as part of our forms management project with them and with Rain, and throughout conversations as we started this, I quickly realized I needed to understand the building blocks in JD Edwards that allowed the use of the embedded BI Publisher capabilities for our forms management. So that's kind of what I'm going to cover here today, not the layout as Rain alluded to before, but more of the building blocks in JD Edwards. The first step that Rain mentioned, you're going to need to create an XMLP or a BI Publisher template or BI Publisher object. You can create these via the web or a fat client. I always use the full client for this, and you can either do it via the BI Publisher repository, which is the P95600, or you can create it standalone by adding an object when you're in OMW and selecting the XML Publisher object. As you go through, as any creation of any object, if you're familiar with that within the E1 architecture, you supply an object name and a description. Your object name is very important, as you'll see as you go through the different building blocks. If you have something well-defined, it can carry forward through your objects to make the logical connection between the different connected objects easier to understand at a later point. The different object types listed out there on the screen, we only use the TR object type, which is related to that RTF template that Rain mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to note, after you get through your product code and your system code and origin of region and your language, the effective dates are very important. You need a starting date listed here. The end date is not required. You do have a maximum file limitation when you're uploading your RTF file of 50 megabytes. You can override that if your RTF file requires a bigger capacity there. You can adjust that on your full client via your INI settings there, or on the web client if you're accessing it via the thin client via the jazz.ini settings. So after you get through the initial setup of the XML publisher object or the BI publisher template object, you'll click OK. It will prompt you to upload. That is where you're going to upload that RTF file, the layout file that Rain had mentioned. Initially, you're going to use a blank RTF file. That'll allow you to get that XML. But you're able to, when you're done, upload that finished template via the same program, via the BI publisher object repository. And then finally, you're going to put those start dates in. And creation of this, either through the thin client or via your full client, is going to put this object in your OMW, your default OMW project, which will require promotion later. But we'll cover that in a bit. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. The next step is you're going to be creating your report definition object. This is that second step that Rain had mentioned earlier. There's actually a 3-step process to that, and that's report definition object is used to process and deliver your BI publisher output. The XML object that we just covered is a prerequisite for this. As you'll see at the bottom of the screen, you have to attach that to your report definition object. When you create this, again, you can create it. If you create it via OMW, you can select an RD report definition object type. You can also do it, again, web or FAT client, but all creation and modifications must be done on the FAT client itself. So there's 3 steps involved with creating a report definition object. You're going to need to define the source and the template. Then you're going to define the output type. And then finally, as Rain mentioned, you're going to define any optional bursting or delivery options for that output. So to start with, the first step of the report definition, you're going to define your source and template. And then, again, this is in that 95620 as listed there on the screen. Your report definition object should tie with that template. If you look there, you've got the 03B5001. That ties with the prior part of your XML publisher object. Makes it easy to connect the two. So when you're filling this out, you fill in your report definition name and description, again, your product code and your system code. When you get to the source UBE and your version, the UBE is required and your version is optional. If the version is not specified, your report definition will work for all the versions underneath that. So if you have 12 versions of your R03B5001 and you don't specify it here, it can work for all of them, assuming that later you attach the report definition to that report version itself. Now, what that allows for is some flexibility in a one-to-one or a one-to-many configuration. So after you define your source UBE or your version, you're going to need to attach that template that you created in our prior step. If you load that, you can look it up and attach that on this first step. If that comes through and it says inactive in that third column there, that is due to your BI publisher object date range not being valid. So you're going to have to go back, adjust your date, or fix your date ranges on your BI publisher object before you can proceed. The blind submission checkbox in the upper portion of the screen, this selection controls whether the user will be prompted with the report definition form when running the job. So if it's selected, it'll be blindly submitted without the configured options of the report definition. So moving on to step 2. Step 2 is where you're going to define the output types. Now we only use, at Hamilton, we're only using PDFs. So what you want to make sure that at the top, as you go through the second step, all of your report definition that you set on step 1 will be defaulted in, but you're going to select your output types. For your default list, you have to have the available box checked on the left in order to have the option to select that on the right. But the default, the output types determine what is available to the users, and that depends on the type of template used. So if you don't have a template available It's based upon the type of template that you would set up on the BI Publisher object itself. And then I touched on the default. In order for it to be available, you have to have it, or in order to select it as a default, you have to have it marked as available. So the second step, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So then third step, the final step of it, where it gives you a little more, a lot of flexibility with how you're going to possibly break your report apart or deliver it to your end users based upon their needs. Hamilton presently doesn't utilize any of this functionality yet. We have plans to in the future, but working through this with Rain, and like you know, the bursting element of it, if you're familiar with UBEs and how they're structured, the report definition object can be, you can choose to burst it based on any level break section within the batch application itself. It's typically from a level break header section, and that burst field on the right there, it has to contain the full XML path from that XML output in order for that to work properly. You have a varied array of delivery options available to you. You can have it delivered to a printer if you have that configured in your P98616. You can send it to an address book number email, the email associated with an address book number. You can have specific designated email addresses if it's hard-coded. Say you want to always have something delivered to your AP manager on an invoice coming, or a voucher coming out. You can tailor under the email details data dictionary glossary items that will customize the text of the email coming out of it. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. Another big item that allows you flexibility without defining anything specific is using data-driven delivery. This will burst or deliver information based on the data generated by the batch application itself. And then finally, I don't have it shown on the screen there, but you can override the output file name to make it read something else. And if email is the chosen delivery, then the customized output file name can be in that email as well. So that's your third and final step to creating the report definition object. So then you've got your BI Publisher object in place. You have it attached to your report definition object. So now what do you need to do? That third step that Rain talked about is you got to attach that report definition object to a version itself. So here again, you're going to go to, in order for the, let me step back a little bit. And in order for your BI Publisher template object to generate any type of output, whether that's when you're starting and you're just trying to generate that XML data, or you have a final output, that report definition object, which the BI Publisher template object is attached to, has to be attached to a version of batch application that it's associated with. So from this, you're going to need to go in to either OMW and check out that batch version that Rain mentioned, or go into your BV application, and this needs to be done on the full client. From there, you choose a row exit and go to the version detail. You need to select on the version, the report version itself. Select the row exit and go to that version detail. From that version detail program, you do a form exit and you go to report definition that you see on the screen there. Do a quick lookup and you can attach that report definition object to the version itself. You're then going to want to make sure that you promote that batch version through your OMW lifecycle, and so therefore you have to move it out of your default project into a normal OMW project and move that over. So those are the three pieces that will building blocks that will get that information out to your users. Okay, next slide. There we go. So now you've got it all in place. Everything's been completed. But how do we get to the fruits of our labor, right? So as Rain mentioned, either work with submitted jobs, or you can go to the report definition jobs, which is a BI Publisher program, that P95630, and access that information there. If you're new to BI Publisher, or your end users are, and you're using a third-party solution like we were before, your row exits for your end users are going to look a little bit different than they did before. You're going to have 3 or 4 new items for them to look at. You can use these new items to access the output, the XML source, and any delivery details associated with that. A quick note on the republish RD, that is some pretty handy abilities that you can work with, because it enables you to create output without having to run the batch version or the batch job itself again. If you have an update job that runs, and after you open it, your rendered output from your BI Publisher template isn't quite right, or it's missing something, and you can't run that job again because it's an update job. As long as that XML output contains the right information, you can open up your, download the template, make your adjustments, reassign via an existing XML tag, upload it again, select a republish, and using the same XML from that job, it'll render that fix for you. So it's kind of a handy little feature that helps you as long as you got that XML in place. A big note for your end users, if you have a large batch job that's subject to forms management, the size of that job will affect the rendering time. So our prior solution, Create Form, would run, and it would deliver the standard JDE output to Adobe. And the plugin via Adobe would do the rendering of the form. It's different with BI Publisher. As Rain mentioned, it's all within the E1 tool set. It's all within the JD Edwards architecture. So it does the rendering on the enterprise server. And if it's a large job, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to render on the server. So there's times where your batch job may complete. It'll say done in the work with submitted jobs. Your user will click on it and nothing will open. It'll take you to the report definition job queue, and there's nothing there. Just be patient. It just takes a little bit longer for it to render. Another area that I think is important is setting your BI Publisher output to archive. BI Publisher output does not go to the print queue on your enterprise server like any standard batch submission does. So what we did is there's a configuration setting within your INI file that you'd go in under the UBE section where you can set it to archive that any BI Publisher output. We created a directory and put that file path in there. Now everything is archived and we can retrieve it later. Okay, move on. Some of the tips and tricks that we found as we worked through our migration and working with RAIN. Again, that naming convention is really important. If you look at that top line there, our XML object, the BI Publisher template object, or report definition, and the report that it's attached to itself, we all tag with the 03B20. It makes it easy to follow and the connection between the two, or the 3 pieces. So that's important. It just later maintenance and management, it just helps tie everything together. Again, that archiving option that I just mentioned in INI has a big impact. We have a contract billing process that runs monthly that generates 250 to 300 different invoices. Our end users do not want to go through and select 300 different documents and open them one by one from the job queue. So we're able to go into that BI Publisher output directory on the enterprise server, zip them up, and just deliver them in kind of a roundabout fashion for them. It's important to note, while Rain is excellent with his BI Publisher development craft, there are standard federal forms, 1099s, W-2s, 1095s, that are delivered with yearly ESUs. Take advantage of that. Download those ESUs and test with that. You should be able to use some of the building blocks, things we discussed here today without any in-depth knowledge to put in place to take advantage of that right out of the gate. The objects, the JD Edwards objects can be created, via P95600, 95620. Just become familiar with those programs. I kind of list off to the right there all of the files that are impacted with the embedded BI publisher for reference. Become familiar with that. That helps. And again, anything that you create in the BI publisher repository or the report definition applications, those objects are added to your default OMW project. They're non-object librarian objects, so you need to move those over into a regular OMW project and advance them through that life cycle. As Rain mentioned, if you're using Micker on bank forms, that may require a separate licensing product to get those fees. We use Morovia, and one of the things that we ran into with that, well, we found a lot of peers had mentioned that they use that same application. They just got an enterprise license for it. Well, after kind of thinking through that and talking with the people from Morovia, we determined that we really only needed a single-use license because it's on one server. It's on that enterprise server only. So we didn't need to get an enterprise. I mean, that is only, I don't know, $800 to $1,000, but that's what we saved by getting that single-use license, because it's only going to be used to generate on the enterprise server itself, not on everybody's local machines that are going to be using. And then there are free fonts from some peers that use labeling. That there are some free fonts that can be used for barcoding if that's applicable to your installed footprint. So, all right, jump to the next. All right. Then finally, we mentioned earlier, all of your design of your forms management is in that RTF, that layout that Rain discussed, and those templates are done via that Word plugin. So when you're downloading that, it's just a quick overview of information. We're not going to walk through an actual RTF designer template. I'm not, but here's some information that at least help you get that downloaded. There's different versions depending upon your tools release, and the reference to the Oracle doc there. You can download the plugin via that link. Make sure to grab the right plugin, that embedded BI, not the OBIE one. There's also a 32 and a 64-bit. Rain, I believe you always advise us to use the 32 at this point, just because it seems to work a little better. Is that accurate still?
Yes, it's accurate, and that would be dependent on what version of Office you have. So if you have 64-bit Office, it would definitely support the 64-bit Office plugin. But we just noticed that through several version testing and development, the 32-bit's a lot more stable, less configuration issues or anything like that. So, but
cool, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so that's kind of my portion of it. Just a little bit of kind of Hamilton Telecommunications final comments and thoughts on this. Again, we were just kind of give you everyone an understanding of the building blocks of it and some of the experiences why we decided to migrate our forms management. Some of the things that from a customer's perspective that we found very important if you're going to migrate to this is your planning and your project management efforts in this. It's very important. What we did is we created an inventory before we even started with this when we were scoping whether or not migration would get approved or whether it was cost effective. We did an inventory of all our dependent batch applications and forms. From there, we determined testing responsibility for each of those versions and the forms that were associated with it. Ran a SQL query over the submitted job queue to from a 6-month period to find who was running them the most. We then engaged those end users and assigned responsibility that way. And development or management with a developer is really important. Rain, that was one of the biggest wins for us, was my ability to work with Rain back and forth on progress, needs, or requirements for individual forms management changes. That was very helpful, and Rain's a straight-up pro in being able to facilitate that. Also, one of the big things for us was the planning and project effort. was a transparency of what we were doing and how it impacted the end users. Most of them didn't realize there was actually a change other than when it came time to open up the rendered form itself. So I would say, you know, you going into this, you kind of got to have your eyes wide open, and everybody's support structure. We at Hamilton, we have a very lean support staff, not very many hands to support our installed footprint. So depending upon your support structure, make sure you go in with your eyes wide open, because our level of effort internally, not on Team Kane or Rain side, was a lot higher than expected just because of the detailed testing and the need from some of our end users' knowledge of what actually was dependent upon the forms management solution. So it was pretty intense right before we went live, but we had to do it because we didn't have a server stood up to to host our other solutions. So we got it done. Overall, from Hamilton's perspective, it was a resounding success. We dropped our forms template inventory from over 120 down to a more manageable 25 to 30 different templates that we can manage. We were able to do some of that. We were able to handle multiple companies that had different header or logo requirements underneath the same batch job within the same form because of Rain's ability to work with the BI publisher logic pieces and how we structure that. Overall, by doing this project and migrating our forms management from Create Form to our existing licensed embedded BI, we saved $8,000 to $10,000 a year on licensing, support, and hosting costs. We pulled all of our forms management solution under one roof. It's all, again, within our E1 architecture, within the tool set that's available to us. We've got more of a handle of managing that internally, and I would really say that using Team Kane's BI Publisher packs, as they'll discuss here in a second, as our basis for customization, drastically lessen the development effort and the external dollar spend on this migration project. So overall, it was very successful for Hamilton, and we've been using it now for going on 10 months here. So,
Wow.
Rain, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Andrew. And there will be some contact details at the end of this presentation, so if you have any questions, Andrew has given us full permission to say feel free to reach out to him. He's happy to help and give any additional information on any of that. And the same goes for us. We'll have some stuff at the end there for that. So as Andrew mentioned, the use of the Team Kane's BI Publisher packs lessened the development effort on creating some of the reports that he had. So what this means is we used what we had currently available and then made any additional tweaks and customizations to address the specific requirements for Hamilton Tel's reports. So I'll be going through what our Team Kane BI Publisher packs are and what they cover and all of that. So our BI Publisher packs are pre-configured, easy to maintain, production-ready designs. So these are the designs of your report output. They include advanced features, and the ones in bold here are ones that we've very heavily utilized for Hamilton Tel. So they include the ability to control the logo display, so whether it is displayed and under which conditions the logos are displayed and which ones. Also advanced watermarks, so whether the watermark is being displayed and what text should be displayed under which circumstances. So a lot of dynamic capabilities on that one. Our packs also include multiple language support. Currently we have English, Spanish, and French. And with that includes not only the verbiage adjustments, but also for French specifically, currency modifications to display how they have their different currency, like the $ at the end and commas and such. We also have a built-in ability to control the display of global messages, brought forward totals, and cumulative totals. So that's pretty useful for large invoices that overflow to multiple pages. Large phone bill, for example, with 30 pages, you can keep track of what the totals are thus far and the running totals. Now our templates are our templates are designed and developed with the most commonly used data fields on the reports, And with that, we have the ability to, of course, add, remove, or adjust fields as necessary. So your standard R42565, your invoices will have the most common fields already on our report. Now, that being said, the templates can be used with custom UBE versions, but they are developed to display the common JDE standard fields, and depending on what customization you have, it may work flawlessly or requires a bit of attention. For example, some clients we've seen create additional versions, custom versions, specifically to alter which logo is displayed. And that's just a callback to, for example, a create form. You have multiple versions just to change the logo or the header. As Andrew mentioned, we were able to consolidate all of that into one template and have conditional logic pull what is necessary when it is necessary. So even with the custom version, we can make that work and it will display the most common fields. Because these templates are already developed with these advanced features and the common fields, it's a simple process to load them into JDE and produce your output. A nice load and go approach. And before we go a little bit about our BI packs, what we have to offer, I'm just going to hand this over to Mike to talk about our check maintenance application.
Great, thanks, Rain. The genesis for this, first of all, for the BI Publisher packs, we were Createform's main partner for JD Edwards for about 7 years and partner of the year for a long time. So the genesis for the BI Publisher packs to begin with was all the designs that we did for so many years for people with Createform and wanting to extend that and the sophistication into using BI Publisher. As we worked with customers on this, and we saw this as well on the Createform side and in straight JD Edwards, those that had a large number of bank accounts, so you're either running a large multi-company environment, could be in property management, you could be running a lot of job situations where you have separate banks for the different jobs that you're running. Anyway, in a scenario like that, there's no easy solution for things like the signatures that you need and the signature limits for each of the banks, which signatures to apply, whether you want to override the bank address for something a bit more specific, whether there's possibly a logo that's going to be different, maybe not necessarily by bank, but by company and within the company by bank. There's no simple way to do this in JD Edwards, and if you're using a third-party solution like Createform or Transform, you have to build the logic in there, and particularly for the micro line, into stream scripts and so forth. So in other words, it's a technical solution. We wanted to get past that. So we've had 2 iterations of this, and the current iteration allows you within JD Edwards, we took the F0030 bank file and the screen program for that, the P0030, and we came up with an extension of that. This allows you to control for both payroll and accounts payable checks, and that's US and Canadian, the ability to assign and maintain within JD Edwards on a screen signature limits, signatures, the microline by the bank accounts that you have, and also assign the logo, and if need be, override the bank name and address. This information then is passed through on the customized version of the check output for payroll and AP, and that is passed through to the BIP designs that Rain has done up and sweeps that in and just works magically. So we've had clients that have taken this, and if they've had 32 different bank accounts, they basically said, we don't need to do the customization within Createform, within JD Edwards or anything else. It's picked up here. Our users control it as well. So as we add or change signing authorities, we don't need to go into a program. We go on screen and do the updates for it. So this is basically eliminating the need to do the coding within BI Publisher. Does a nice job of getting away from some of the sophistication that would need to be there in the scripting side with other tools, and get you away from the mods that you would otherwise need to do in JD Edwards. So you're getting user control for it. So a great example of what can be done, the combination of understanding how the stuff works in JD Edwards and building it in to work with the templates like we've got in there. So there you go. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. So here we have a quick visual look at what Team Kane's current BI Publisher packs the ones that are available. I bolded the ones that we used for Hamilton Tel's upgrade project, but just a quick run through here. We used the basis of AP checks, payroll and direct deposit receipts, purchase orders, and invoices. I believe the biggest one here was the invoice. We were able to consolidate about 18 or so separate versions into a single template, into a single version, mostly because the customizations that Hamilton Tel had, or the requirements, were for multiple headers or differentiating headers. So using some logic, we were able to consolidate that all into one. So that was a fairly successful one there. We also offer some other ones here, total compensation statements, for example, pay stubs, pick-pack slips, and work orders. And a little caveat on work orders, that's always a fun report to tackle. So we do offer that, but it will probably require a little bit of communication on getting that to work perfectly done. And another one that we used for a large portion of the Hamilton Tel were custom reports. So of course, we can create that based on a current design that you have or one that you're looking to. Dreams of designs, definitely tackle those, not first. But the cream of the crop there would be if you have create form designs are coming from a third party, you show that this is the output that you currently have and you want to replicate, we can create a custom BI Publisher report that can replicate that output. So if you need any custom forms or would like to utilize any of this, just let us know. We can design it for you. Just going to talk a little bit about the different BI Publisher pack levels that we have. We just have the two. We have gold packages, so these are gold designs of any of the previous ones that we mentioned. They are fully complete designs that are ready to produce an output. They have logos and they have pre-configured totals and page numbers and some of those niceties on those. And in the design of these and any of them, we do follow the best practice for calling in separate sections and having those be displayed properly. Now, an extension of our golds are our platinum packages. Now, these are, on top of all of that, include all the more sophisticated features that we mentioned, dynamic watermarks, languages, the ability to have terms and conditions on the back of every page or at the end of your document, options for totaling, and the global message placements. So those are features, sophisticated features, that are built into our platinum designs. When we're creating these and developing them, we are using intelligent, effective logic for dynamic content and conditional sections. So if that's a bit over your head, not a problem. That's why we're here to help. Definitely let us know what kind of dynamic function you look for. We specialize in making it work. With the purchase of our platinum packages, they also include some development hours. So we can sit down and tweak anything to specifically look the way you want or add additional fields, additional logic and such. And of course, we have some discounts available for multiple package licenses that you purchase. So feel free to get in touch and ask us about our 2018 year-end special. We're excited about those. One thing to note here is that, of course, when you're buying these, there's no annual maintenance fees. You own the template once you buy them. We touched on one particularly useful document that Andrew mentioned there for the version control, but just wanted to highlight that one here along with another very useful one. So I bolded the document ID number. If you go into the Oracle support site, you can search for that ID number to pull up that exact document. Nice and easy. The first one would be for the desktop version / Microsoft version control. So this provides the information on what BI Publisher desktop plugin version you need to download that is supported for your Microsoft Word version, and all of that, what is supported for your current Enterprise One release. So there is a compatibility and version control there, so you just need to make sure that you have the right ones. And the second important document there is the engine versions and known issues. So this is a very useful document that provides information on what new versions of BI Publisher fix or known issues of what particular older versions have. So if you have an older version of E1, sorry, then you need to download an older version, and here you can see what kind of limitations or bugs you can expect, and be aware of that. But not mostly breaking, more so a limitation of how complex you can design dynamic content. That was the major one that we saw. So this is a very useful document. So to pass this on to closing, I'm just going to throw it back to Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. Before we get into the Team Kane solutions, the quick overview in the last wrap-up part, I did want to harken back, and this is particularly for myself with the amount of time being in JD Edwards and also the amount of time having worked with Createform. We did a lot of very sophisticated things for customers, and we kind of stayed away from BI Publisher actually for a number of years because we just didn't feel it was quite ready for prime time. There are some things that there's some sophistication, like the ability to actually read out the data files and pull information forward that you cannot do with BI Publisher, still that you can do something like Transform. But we've categorically seen, Andrew was mentioning about going from 120 different templates down to 25. We see that on a regular basis for clients that move away from a third-party solution to BI Publisher. There's a bit of a fear and uncertainty, it seems, about moving from other solutions. And what we've seen from a number of customers is it really shouldn't be there. Andrew mentioned about the analysis and taking the time to look at what you're doing and to have a plan and have a roadmap and make sure that you've got things covered off. Absolutely the case, but part of our message is, hey, it doesn't have to be painful, and there are certainly ways to get past it. We've got a lot of experience, and to Andrew's point, the BI Publisher packs that we offer, cheesy sales pitch here, but they do help out. They get you to completion a lot quicker. So a little bit just on Team Kane Solutions, Inc., formerly known as Team Kane. We are now part of the ISP3 organization. Between the two organizations, there's probably very little in the way of what you would want to do in Enterprise One or World that we do not have skills with. Those of you that are familiar with Team Kane and all that we've done, strong background in manufacturing and distribution, and certainly in add-on solutions, coupling that with extreme strength in CNC, managed services, heavy industry, and in particular payroll, HR, HCM on the ISP3 side. So very, very strong offering between us. ISP3 is also formally a partner with Oracle in the cloud offerings, and ISP3 actually runs their business on the public cloud, and can work with anybody that's interested on that side and the infrastructure as a service side. ISP3 is also a partner of the other solution that you might not be aware of that Oracle has, which is NetSuite. So if you have divisions or areas that might be interested in that and a pure cloud-based offering, let us know. We can certainly help out on that side. Next slide, please, Ray. So we talked about the BI Publisher packs here. Just part of the hallmark of what we've done over the years is make sure that we help our customers to address areas of need that are not filled within JD Edwards. So some of the other areas include package build automation. So if you're a CNC or technical person and you're struggling with a lot of package builds and want to make that quicker and easier, we can help out. Same thing with self-serve password reset. If your help desk is getting inundated by those pesky users who keep forgetting their passwords and call in, we got a way to automate that with the SSPR solution. And if you're looking for AP automation that is built basically into JD Edwards with mobile extension and want it in a cost-effective way, ScanMan solution can help out with that. We have worked with the Purge It solution for JD Edwards archive and purge of data for years. I just completed a couple of projects on that, and we've been a partner for coming up on probably 18 years with RF Smart for RF automation. And again, all of these are built into and tied into and Oracle validated integration. So a little bit about some of the other things that we offer. And it is interesting, I'll say, with having been involved with JD Edwards or with Team Kane for 17 years, there's so many times we are in doing a solution for a client. Could be purging, could be an upgrade, could be a migration, could be expense management. And when we mention about the other things, customers have no idea about the breadth of the offerings that we have. So, and we're thrilled to be extending them with everything else that ISP3 brings to the joint organization as well. So thanks, Shane.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, funnily enough, there's been a couple of questions, but really not so much to do on the BI publisher side. One question that somebody mentioned, we probably should have touched on this earlier. My bad on that, Rain, but absolutely, if you want a copy of the presentation, PDF or PowerPoint format, we can provide that to you. So, Rain also mentioned we've recorded this. So if you'd like a link to the recording, we can certainly send that out. We will reach out to each of you and just see what you think afterwards. Please try and remember to do the survey. But we will reach out afterwards, see what you think, see if there might be some interest on your side on the help that we can provide with BI Publisher and on the BI Publisher packs. And as well, absolutely, let you reach out to Andrew if you want to pick his brain on more things. I tell you, we've had the honor and pleasure of working with Andrew for a number of years on a number of things, and also seeing all that he does to give back to the user community, and just thrilled to be able to have access to him for something like this for the customer base. So talking about what Hamilton Tel did for the BI Publisher side for it. So Andrew, thanks for this, and thanks just in general for all that you do for the community. I'd clap other than, or sing, but it's probably not what people want to hear right now. So
Thank you, Mike.
So no other questions at this point, but what we can do, any last comments, Rain, on your side? Any last comments, Andrew, or thoughts that you guys want to share? And other than that, we can just keep this open for an extra few minutes and see if there's any questions that people come up with.
Yeah, I'll just talk about a few things that we discussed. The one was the size limit on the templates that are uploaded, the size limit of 50 megabytes. That's really good, and with that size, you can really include a lot of dynamic capabilities in that. The only thing to keep in mind is because it's all being rendered on the enterprise server, the larger that template file is, the longer it will take to process a single report. So I know Andrew mentioned that they produce several hundreds of outputs for one of their invoices. So if those templates were at that size, it would take quite a while to render. So you can modify that, and that's just a quick little note on that. Another one would be the effective dates. Like Andrew mentioned, if the date range is out, it'll be set as inactive. So just make sure that you have a start date for your template. An open end date just means that it's an indefinite use. You do have the ability to set the actual end date of that particular object's effectivity and then create another one that will take over. So you can, without much hands-on control, switch over to a different template at a particular date and time. So your end, for example, switching to a new logo, you can have that preset up and then have the end of that date range. But,
just piggyback on that, Rain. I've just this morning found that when I was creating one, I needed to delete that object itself. So if you want to delete it, you have to have an end date on there in order to be able to delete that object.
Yes, it's a little finicky when it comes to that. They do allow for that. Like I said, the transition over control, but like you said, it's just you have to be aware of that option being done. So thanks for mentioning that.
This is at the tail end as well, perhaps, Andrew, but on your side, is there, if you had to pick one or two things that surprised you either happily or, wow, with the project overall, anything kind of jump out in your mind?
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out to me was just from our user community. After a while, after you're working in the system for so long, everything becomes second nature to you. A lot of your end users, even with a third-party solution, don't understand that there is that in-between layer with the data delivered via JD Edwards via the standard output of a batch application, that rendering, that form, that business document that's provided that they'll open up, they don't know there's something associated that makes the pretty professional business document. So that was a little bit of a surprise when we're trying to work with some of the requirements with RAIN. We had some pretty detailed, specific questions that we needed, and when we're engaging our users who actually own that business process, there was it took a little bit longer than anticipated, just because they had to familiarize themselves with how the process worked and the different variables. So there's a little bit of an education, a re-education on their part with what actually drives and or delivers the different fields that are applicable and appropriate for driving the output content.
Yeah, probably even more so, I would think, on some of the custom stuff that is done, because to Rain's point, the standard output out of JD Edwards and the standard, like the designs with the bits, they comprise most of what you'd expect to see on an invoice, on a purchase order, on a paycheck, on a work order, on a pick slip. Even much more so when you get into some of the custom side, users aren't used to thinking in terms of process with the data and how it could impact it. So yeah, it's pushing the boundaries a little bit for them, right?
Absolutely.
I've seen that a few times with like creating an invoice or anything where they have a custom like bank info block or custom block of information specific about their payment instructions and such. And then, we're creating the design. A question comes up, is this driven by the data, or is this, an ad hoc piece of static text that a third-party solution has implemented? And then, like to your point there, Andrew, go back and just a re-education on what the specs were for creating that and where all the data comes from. So it's good to know.
Another item that we kind of discovered as part of the process is with some of our create form templates, we had actually, instead of using storage capabilities within the system, say a routing or an account number for a bank, that it was actually baked into the logic of the template within create form, and not,
right.
Instead of having it delivered via XML, letting JD Edwards do the heavy lift, and we were forcing the solution, the form solution, to do some of that heavy lift. And I don't believe we addressed that, but it gave us that, oh, there's some different options available for us. We could store this within the system, and then the solution doesn't have to. It's a little bit more dynamic in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We've seen that as well when we are looking at things where the data might not be there, and it comes down to a choice as to how you want to do it. It's funny how often the most effective and efficient way is to just chuck, for lack of a technical word, but put the information on the XML outbound within the UBE on the JD Edwards side, because you're doing all the logic and you're doing all the retrievals and you're doing everything of a technical nature anyway. Just put it in there and you're simplifying it so much. That also, in RAIN, we've seen this so many times with customers. It's probably the dead easiest solution to one of the few things that BF Publisher can't do yet, which is the actual data field retrieval out of JD Edwards, right? So
yeah.
One of the limitations of what I would like to see addressed is you can find the XML tag within the batch application itself. If you go into RDA and you look at the UBE, you can the alias on the data item itself. That's what the XML tag information is, except for the end of that tag where it
the ID.
I believe the ID. That's one thing I'd like to see change, so you could actually go into RDA. You can find the alias, you know what that is, instead of having to hunt and find, make sure that because not always does the business process generate the output with the needed field being populated. So if you'd be able to have that in the RDA where you know what that ID suffix is to that XML tag, that would make it so much easier than having to guess or go down that path.
Then you can start, you can start mapping those fields as you're designing instead of having to ask the user to run that extremely odd scenario that happens to produce that fourth or fifth address line. So,
Correct.
yeah, and quite a lot of, like I mentioned, a lot of internal resources needed to devote to that creation and getting all those fields. Last thing you want is to neglect that level of testing, go live, and then, sending out a check and it's missing lines 3 and 4 of an address. So you got to be thorough, but yeah.
Gang, we're about 10 minutes past. I see we've still got a number of people on the session still, but it looks like their attention might have wandered or off to a coffee machine or something. So as happens in the real world. So I think we should be okay. There's no other questions that have come in that we need to answer. So I think we can finish it up now. Folks on our side, if as usual, you might to just hang for a couple of minutes and we can just do a final wrap-up on that. That would be great. Other than that, for everybody that's attended today, thank you so much for your time. Hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something. I find any time I listen to Andrew talk, I've learned something. So today was no different on my side. And Shelley, if you're still there, I think the shout-out at the beginning from Andrew was with regards to you. So bless you for being you, Shelley.
The JDE diva.
The JDE diva, correct. So just look for, if you're at a conference, look for her with crown. That would be Shelley. So.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate it.